From the Xfinity Studios at WVON, it's The Morning Show with Rufus Williams on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON.
Dr. Brazier is here, and this whole issue of we are in this election period. Elections matter, winning matters, and choices matter. Joining us to talk about what all of this is from his perspective and his vantage point, Dr. Byron Brazier, the pastor of Apostolic Church here in Chicago, has some real thoughts on this, and happy to have him come on and share them with us this morning. Dr. Brazier, good morning and welcome back to WVON. How are you today?
Rufus, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's always a blessing when I can have a conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It's really good to talk to you, and thank you for having me on your show.
Indeed. Well, let's talk about what's important to us in this whole discussion about the election. What we can and should be doing, I know is important to you as well. So share some thoughts with us on your thoughts on getting a deeper understanding about this election and why we need to engage.
Thank you, Rufus. As I have talked to many people in our communities as well as members of the church, the need to promote a deeper and strategic and compelling understanding of our elections and how we fully engage become extremely important, especially given during this time of great deceptions, cultural conflicts, systemic disparities, the attack on democratic institutions from within the institutions, trying to find cultural advantage. And these things are huge elements that sometimes go beyond and are not taken into account when it comes down to the need to vote. There are too many things that are taking place. And if in fact we are to move forward and as our own culture, as our own society, within the society, we absolutely need to vote so that the cultures that actually are in conflict with what our needs are, that those are inhibited because we vote. When we don't vote, and many politicians that I have heard about and talked to, in many cases they're looking for the low voter turnout. And when we turn out, things do change and things do matter. And it's more, Rufus, it's more than just voting, for personal preferences. Some people say, well, I don't like the way they talk. I don't like this. I don't like that. This is really not about personal preferences anymore. This is about Black people. This is about neighborhood interests. And when people want to say, well, I care about gentrification, I care about displacement, I care about schools, I care about all these things, then you have to have people in these offices that can actually do things for us. And when we don't vote, then they don't necessarily care. But when we do vote, that is when they do care. And so the personal preferences has to really step aside for what the candidates actually believe. Not just what they say, but what they believe. So if you may say that we are for Black people, but then you call where we live a hellhole, that becomes a problem. So, how can I vote for you when you deal with a level of rhetoric that demonstrates that you're not, and you have to hold people account to what they say, and not just what they want you to believe. Their character, and they're believing deceptive lies. They're believing certain things about our community, believing other things that belong to a different culture, becomes a problem for us. And the commercials themselves become problematic because they don't say anything. You've seen the commercials where that said one of the candidates is from Southern Illinois and you can trust them. And it was kind of like, trust them to do what? I mean, it doesn't really say anything. It just says you can trust them. And my comment is, trust them to do what? Right? Because I haven't heard anything about what you want to do with education. You blame somebody else for something when in fact you don't have a solution. Becomes a problem for our communities when they look to only provide a front for themselves, when in fact we would actually require a whole lot more.
So, Dr. Brazier, I think about this and think about the time in which there was less money involved in political campaigns, and people were actually going door to door, and people were actually getting to meet candidates, and people were actually having an opportunity to hear them say what they were saying. But I watch now in these commercials, the one you just mentioned about Believe in the Farmer. There are a couple of ladies who come on and talk about some other things that they may have asked the current governor to do, but it really doesn't give you a sense of anything in those commercials. It's just a constant push of something that doesn't tell you what's real. And so when people are trying to figure out what is it that a candidate believes, what is in their character, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you certainly have to be conscious and read or have open discussions. You need to ask someone, what do you think of this one? What do you think of that one? And get others' opinions. You have to begin to say, what is my strategic view of these candidates and what I should or why I should vote. So, once you have an understanding of their character and their understanding, which is widely understood, I mean, it is widely, all you have to do is just Google a few Sun Times articles, and you can tell the character of who you're dealing with and what you're dealing with. But strategically, Rufus, I think that we have to deal with accessibilities. How are we accessible to the candidate that is going to be in office?
And how are they accessible to us? Because when they get there, we still have needs, and they've shared things, and we have to hold them accountable to that. And we can only do that by continuing to be in their space and their place and making sure that the things that we are needing are being managed, which only comes from a direct connection with them, with that accessibility being critical to all of that. We're going to pause for traffic and weather. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Dr. Brazier about voting and getting a deeper understanding of these elections and why it's important that we engage fully in what's going on.
Now back to the morning show with Rufus Williams on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON.
With Dr. Byron Brazier of Apostolic Church about just gaining a deeper understanding about elections and why we need to fully engage. Dr. Brazier, you were talking about really understanding the strategic interest of black people, understanding where these candidates fit into that process. Continue on down that road. You talked about accessibility. I know there are a couple of other points that you wanted to make on that.
Sure. In the area of accessibility, we have tended to have more access. Whether they've done anything or not is, we can deal with that as we go forward, or what they've done to support our communities. But the accessibility becomes very important. And the other element of this election, especially as it deals with state representatives and state senators, is that currently the Democrats have a supermajority. It is important that we maintain that supermajority and that people vote for their best interest, and we minimize the deceptions and the conflicts when there's a supermajority. And if you take a look at the surrounding states, which tend to be red states all around us, Illinois stands as a blue state primarily because of our supermajority. And so it is important that we maintain that strategic position. And so if you vote, and when you vote for the state reps that are on the Democratic ticket, because that's going to be very, very important in the future. Even if there is a Republican governor, it is through the supermajority that we can continue to move a black agenda forward. And so accessibility becomes very, very important. The other element is when you hear a commercial, you have to ask yourself in that commercial, is this a slogan or are these facts? Mm. And so when you see an ad that says, here's what we've done, here's what we've done, here's what we've done, here's where we're going, here's what we've done, then that becomes one thing. If all you see is a slogan with no facts behind it, those are the ones that you want to begin to discard. Not only are they discredited, they're actually an affront to well-thinking people. And so you move those out and you begin to deal with, okay, I'm accessible, I need to understand a certain level of majority, but we also have to have unity of purpose. If we care about the schools and we care about crime, we need to do these things. But one of the elements on this strategic piece is that everyone wants to talk about crime, especially the Republicans. They want to talk about their criminal activities, when in fact they've done really nothing to this, and in some cases Democrats have not either. And the primary thing on this is that we are the ones we as black people, we are the ones who live in this community, are responsible for our own criminal activity. And people may not like that, but I will tell you that we can stop the crime that is going on in our own community. Very similar to what took place in Washington Park, when the neighbors found the guy who raped the little 11-year-old girl and turned him in. This is the kind of thing that is necessary, where we as our own community, we can handle these things. These things cannot be handled by downtown Chicago or the State House. There's certain things we have to handle ourselves, but we also have to have the accessibilities and the capability to deliver legislation that benefit us. And we have to be in a position to be able to say, here's the legislation we need, not for a politician to say, here's the legislation you're going to get. So it becomes very important that we as a community operate out of the unity that is necessary. And when we say strategically, I don't need to vote for accessibility, I need to vote my interest, I need to vote my purpose, and I need to vote the facts. Those become that's when you become that strategic voter, not just someone who goes in and, but that strategic voter that determines, here's what I want to do, and here's how I like to do it, and here's how I'm going to engage, here's how I'm going to be involved. When we are not involved, then we get taken advantage of. When we are involved, that is when our accessibilities and everything else takes place.
Can you make the connection between what happens now with so many candidates who are money tends to be an issue, and there's a belief that those who are doing the most contributing to a candidate are the ones who are going to get the most attention from them? Is that a notion that we should believe, or can we dispel that?
I'm sorry, Rufus, repeat your question again.
I said, is that a notion that we should follow and believe, or is that something that we should dispel? Because our votes count as much as anybody who's paying money when it comes to the voting booth.
Yeah, I would say that money does certainly matter, especially given the level of communications that we have, the internet, all kind of promos. You can't even go on YouTube and look up an item without seeing a commercial pop up, 15 seconds, or this commercial runs to the end. It is the commercialization of politics is everywhere. They've leveraged it, and so the more times they have a touch point on people and deliver a message, the better they think it is, and so they avoid going out on the streets. They avoid small meetings. They avoid any number of things. They don't have to go because they get better leverage just by doing social media. I haven't seen one Republican come to the South Side that I've seen. They're just not here, and they just run commercials and they use African Americans as fronts, and we know how that is. I've seen that. I'm 72 years old, so I've seen a lot of it. But we then must be strategic in what we bring in and what we perceive, and be a kind of voter that is perceives deceptions and culture differences.
Dr. Brazier, thank you so much for this thoughtful conversation about the election process, the voting, and what we should be thinking about and how we need to participate. This is a really important understanding that we need to continue to have and continue to share over our airwaves as we move forward in this process. I appreciate you being on with me this morning.
Thank you, Rufus. I appreciate you, and may God bless you.